Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, Travis, how are you?
Good, good. What's your name?
Lewis.
Lewis. Hey, Lewis. What are we doing today?
We're going to look at, I think it's a little nano tank that's sitting on my desk next to me. It's about 2 years old. You and I have been working on it for a little while. It had some neglect for a while, and I managed to clean that up about 2 months ago.
Hmm.
But never really got great, consistent coral growth out of the difference. So I was trying to go with the mixed reef type thing. You can see that Monty in the upper right kind of took off and did awesome. The
Yeah.
mushroom did good. This hammer, that blue poly, whatever it is, down in the corner, he took
Yeah,
off.
the
But
Arctic ice. Yep.
the Arctic ice, yeah, the torch seems to be happy.
Hmm.
But that was really it. I haven't had a lot of luck with the zoas that I have in there, although the Rastas down there seem to be doing all right. But it was Aquashella here a couple weeks ago, and
Hmm.
so I went and had cleaned it up, got things pretty stable. We can go over parameters in a bit, but
Okay, cool.
went and bought a bunch of new Zoas and a bunch of new things, and had set up a quarantine tank, and that went south fast. I don't know what happened, so
Okay.
pulled them out and put them into the display tank. Except for there's still a clam downstairs. We'll look at that.
Okay. All right. So I guess
But
our overall goal is to just kind of troubleshoot some coral growth and kind of just maybe go from there.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. That sounds good. So first of all, what did you pick up from Aquashella?
Let's look. So there's a bunch of, let's see if I can zoom in. You can see my tank there, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Gotcha.
So there's some new, let's get this going.
Get a little frag rack on the bottom there. Yeah.
Yeah, I put a little frag rack in there. So everything to the right was in there already. You can see I got
Okay.
some diatoms. Those
Yeah.
came when I changed the light and cleaned out all the algae. But
Okay.
those rastas were there. But I think those orange ones are butt kissers, and there's I think an utter chaos behind it. And
Okay.
I don't know what the green one is. I think there's some scrambled eggs. Let's see if we get it in
Yeah.
focus behind that
I do
guy.
notice right off the bat, I am noticing that your zoas are reaching for the light. It seems like they're reaching. Does that make sense? Like instead of being kind of flat, I see it a little bit on your Arctic ice, but it does feel like the zoas are reaching. I mean, I don't remember if we talked about par. I know that you said something about adding a new light at one point, but have you done par readings on this tank yet?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I
Okay.
had a HD Prime on there
Okay.
from the beginning,
Okay.
and it was when I took it off and did some par readings, and it was like up where that Monty was like 400 or 500. It was crazy, and then it was kind of 200 down there. The
Okay.
HD Prime started whizzing and whirring like it was just making too much noise.
Hmm.
So I tried to clean it. I tried everything. It was just too loud to have next
So
to my
what's
desk.
on
So
there now? What'd you
now
say?
I got a Kessel A360.
A360X?
There's like a little tuna blue up there
Tuna
if you
blue.
see.
Okay. So that's the A360X?
Yeah, it's their
Okay.
brand new one,
Oh,
XE,
okay.
actually. They just
Oh,
kind of
okay.
came out with a new one, which
Cool.
caused
And
me to
have you done power readings with that yet?
I
Or
have
just no?
well, I'm kind of down on the default settings that it came with
Okay.
because I was just kind of reset the tank when I did all of the cleaning
Okay.
and so forth, and I think it was up too high. So I
Okay.
just kind of take it to the default, and it's much lower than it was.
Okay.
I think up top it's maybe 200 or so, two,
Oh,
300.
okay. Yeah, because I do see the Zoas are reaching. That's the only reason why I bring it up. So I guess once the tank is kind of, like you said, you kind of transitioned and cleaned a bunch of stuff and moved a bunch of stuff around. So as the tank starts settling in, maybe consider increasing the power a little bit to just help with growth overall. But yeah, I mean, you did pretty good at Aquashella, that's for sure. I'm not a big Zoa guy, but when I do have those Rastas, I'm a big fan of the Rastas. I actually just put them in my own Nem tank upstairs. I'm gonna grow them on the bottom glass, so that's one of my favorite Zoas. So, okay, cool. So I do see you have a frag rack there as well. I don't remember seeing that before. Is that the new
Down
stuff or
on the
the old
sand
stuff? Up
or up
top
on
on the
the side.
glass. On the
That's
glass.
new. That's I just got that to hold some of the new Aquashella. So I got a candy cane there.
Okay.
Focus.
Some
There's
Blastos.
candy cane, some Blastos,
Okay, cool.
And everything, it was, they looked great when I came home. I set up the new quarantine tank, and maybe I did that wrong. I just kind of used fresh salt water. I pulled
So
a
let's talk
bag,
about.
a bag of Chem Matrix that I had in this tank for years
Hmm.
out and popped that in there. But it didn't have a great light on it, and I
Okay.
thought things would be okay for a week, but all the zoas really closed up after a bit. And
So let's talk about that then. So you set up the quarantine tank like before you went to Aquashella or after you got home you set it up kind of thing?
like a couple days before.
Before. Okay. And it was just what light was on it if you remember.
It's like my original Fluval Evo 13 gallon, so it's got
Oh.
the built-in tank like light that came with it.
Oh, okay. Okay. So nothing too crazy. Okay, so basically you put the you put the corals in quarantine and then a few days later they were just like covered in algae or just closed up. What was you?
They were they did great for about a day, and then here, I'll show you. Let's see if you can.
Okay. Okay, so this is the
That's when
quarantine
they
tank.
started. Yeah, this was the quarantine tank. When
Oh,
I
okay.
first popped them in there, they were kind of doing well. Um, and then algae started to grow. I was doing almost like a 50% water change every other day, just for lack of knowledge of what to actually do.
Yeah, okay.
Um, but you know, things then.
I see you pull some
Uh,
stuff for your main display out of there too, right? Oh, it looks like it. Like that whole.
well, these are still the SPS there.
Hmm.
No, those are still down there. I didn't bring them up because I think they just
Okay.
died. They bleached out.
Okay. Okay. So I mean, with new quarantine tanks, I'm assuming, like you said, you just used regular salt water and then put some biomedia from your main display in there, correct?
Yeah.
Usually that's fine if you give it a couple weeks to kind of stabilize, but a couple days is usually not enough. Just
Okay.
in past experience, usually we add rock in. Like I see you have that piece of rock in there now, but usually you'll add some biomedia, do a water change, let that stuff sit for a couple weeks, few weeks, let it kind of establish itself, go through its mini cycle. You'll get a little diatoms. I can see a little bit on the bottom there, and then add coral. Coral quarantine tanks are usually something that if you actively are adding corals and you're going to over the next few months, it's something that we tend to kind of keep up all the time because this up and down period is where you kind of get the fluctuations that you don't want. In turn, the coral death, the bleaching, the instability, all that kind of stuff. So I guess just lesson learned forward. If you plan on like overhauling or buying a bunch of corals in the future, set up the quarantine tank a few weeks prior. I mean, that's
Hmm.
that's basically it. Because I mean, you did everything right. New salt. Ideally, if we have a big enough tank, we'd take water from our main display and kind of do it. But using the media is second best thing you can do, right?
Hmm.
So I guess just setting it up a little bit earlier probably would have solved some of that. I've never worked with that light before, so I don't know its overall intensity. But that if you have a par meter, you can always double check and kind of see what you're getting there. But yeah, it could have just been a mixture of stress between coming from the other tank, coming into one that wasn't quite established, and then things just kind of went south. Seems like.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you haven't seen any kind of pests or like spiders or nudies or anything on the zoas, right?
No, you know what? I did
Okay.
do a dip. I did coral dip before I put them into the quarantine tank,
Okay.
and got a lot of stuff out of there. Those little starfish and
Okay. Like little brittle stars and all the kind
little
of.
brittle stars and
Okay.
just tons of little critters came out in the wash.
Okay.
But um, after that, the quarantine tank looks pretty clean, and
Pretty good.
everything
Okay.
on there
Okay.
seems to look good.
Okay. Yeah. Then I think we can chop up the death within the coral quarantine tank is just being an immature system
Okay.
and just not established enough to sustain new corals and just stability wise. Again, outside of not knowing really a lot about the light, those are really the only two factors. Unless you have some crazy temperature swing or something drastic going on, which you're a gear junkie, you have a lot of stuff going on. So I doubt that you are having any kind of issues like that. So yeah, I guess just next time we'll take it as a lesson learned and just kind of set it up sooner,
Okay.
pretty much. So as for the main display, we got the new corals in. The ones that have survived are in this tank. You haven't put them exactly where you want to put them yet. So what is the game plan moving forward?
Well,
With
like that hammer is kind of
Mhm.
taken over everything. So
Mhm.
and that torch too. I think what's left in the tank is the stuff that just kind of survived over the years.
Hmm.
And there wasn't much thought at the time of where to put things. And so as I start, I think that the end game for me, I want something very colorful, So like,
Hmm.
I think that Monty green is great. I'd love to get something red in there. I have a little red Monty cap that maybe I can grow. I tried to put it near that green one
Hmm.
to see if maybe it could capture some of the
Yeah, I see it
magic
up
that's
there on the
going
top
on in
there.
that
Hmm.
upper right corner. Those green mushrooms are doing great, but I'd like to sort of space things out. I do like the Zoa gardens. Like I like kind of
Hmm.
looking down and seeing little zoas growing, little colonies growing on rocks. So maybe that's a good strategy to do. That's why I was cooking that red rock in
That
the
red rock.
other.
Okay.
I thought maybe I'd smash that in half and do
A little
two
island.
two little yeah, two little Zoa
Okay.
islands. I do, I have noticed that they're hard to get off if they do grow onto the main aquascape. And so keeping them on an island like I did with those Arctics, I think
Isolation wise. Just refresh my memory. How big is this display tank again?
25 gallons. It's a
25
water
gallons. Okay.
box, like
Water
all in
box.
one. Yeah, water
All in.
box.
Okay. So I guess if we're gonna, I guess since you have added some coral and you're essentially kind of starting over, since you overhauled the tank, got rid of algae, and kind of cleaned up things and are back into it, at this point, if you want to isolate corals, I would definitely remove the hammer from that rock structure and the torch, put them on their own little rock structures, and get them out into the sand bed because they're just going to continue to grow and take over that. Given that it's such a small tank, I mean, the coral placement is a lot more important than if it was, a 300 gallon. Like you can't get away with a torch coral swinging its sweeper tentacles halfway through the main display. Like that's just not something that's gonna. If you're trying to grow SPS, that's not a thing. So, I would personally isolate those two corals because they can't touch each other either, or they'll kill, or the torch is gonna win. I mean, you probably have seen that already. The torch is really coming through. So, I would isolate them. I would move the zoas closer to the base, or maybe again isolate those on another rock structure. And then I know you sent me a picture before about like how you want the tank to look with a lot of SPS on the rocks and kind of like growing in and all those different colors. You're gonna have to keep the corals away that are going to kill those corals.
Mhm.
That's the thing, and it's the coral warfare that's pretty significant that you have to take into consideration with these smaller tanks. Is that your placement is everything. So if you want SPS to grow, those two that hammer and that torch cannot be there. They just can't because those colonies. I mean, granted, those SPS frags might be an inch and a half now, but they're going to be 5, 6, 7 inches eventually. So what's going to hit them at that point?
Yep.
So I don't know if that's something you're willing to do, but since you are technically overhauling the tank and essentially starting over, I mean, this is the perfect time with the new lighting and just everything, right? So
Yeah, the torch is easy to move. I'm a little scared on like what to do with that hammer. I imagine
you
I
got
think
bone cutters.
it started out as I think like four or three or four heads.
Hmm.
And now there's at least nine in there. Like I see it when I close up. Just do I wait till it closes up and then go
What
in
I
there
would
and
do
kind
is
of
so grab some bone cutters. First of all, go in there with your fingers and kind of like touch the polyps. It will retract
yep.
right into the skeletal structure, and then get at the base and just kind of put a little bit of pressure and then twist. It will pop off the rock structure. At that
Okay.
point, I would go ahead if you have a little saw or whatever. I mean, you could even frag that up and put one head back in the tank because you are essentially starting over. So putting a 9 head colony of hammer that's already grown out in there is just like unnecessary amount of real estate taken up already. So consider putting one head back in and sell off the rest, and buy some more coral with it, or trade it
Yep.
for a local guy. And then just isolate that on its own little rock, put it in the sand bed, and kind of move it away, and then clear up that entire rock structure. I mean, you can fit a ton of frags on that rock structure that will grow in nicely together. If we're talking, I guess, with since we're talking about coral placement and kind of future thinking, I know you love the way that Montipora looks in that corner. That's great, but eventually it's going to really get out there and take up a lot of space, and everything underneath is not going to get any light. Hence, that's probably why that mushroom is still growing. I mean, I can even see right now that it's getting shaded. Half of it's getting shaded just from that, from the Monty. So
Yep.
consider again overhaul. I know you like it, but you could frag that out relocate that a little bit lower, maybe in the back corner where it can grow, eventually hit the glass and kind of work its way up. But having something that's going to plate and get so massive on the very top where it's going to shade out everything else out. I mean, if shade out everything else is something that, I wouldn't necessarily do if you're looking for a long-term grow out situation.
Okay, you're saying that Monty kind of reposition him, frag him up.
Yeah, I would frag him up, and this gives you an opportunity to also put a red Monty cap next to it, put them next to each other in a different location, maybe lower towards the back of the display, or just lower in general so it could grow up instead of it just towering over everything right now. And again, I only say that because I'm talking about long-term grow out.
Yeah.
Like, because of, I've grown so many corals and you kind of get an idea of what they're going to do over time. Eventually, it's a 25-gallon box of water. Like, everything's going to touch each other at some point. It's just how long can you go before you have to tear it down, essentially. That's kind of what we do with tanks in general.
Yep.
So how can you optimize it so it looks the best and fills in the most before eventually either everything kills each other or you have to tear the entire system down? That's what we do. So yeah, I mean how's all that stuff kind of, I know we're talking about like ripping a lot of stuff down. I mean, how's that sitting with you?
No, it's good. I'm more nervous about how to cleanly get it out of there. The stuff that's grown on, but I guess I'll figure that out.
Are you looking like say if you were to move the Monty cap and there's still like remnants of it there kind of thing?
No, well, I think, a lot of the corals I've glued to a rock before I glued, I glued them to a smaller rock before I glued them to the bigger rock structure. So I'm guessing I can probably, twist off that original rock that I grew, that I
It's if
glued
it
on
didn't
there.
encrust. I mean, if it encrust, it's fine. If you have bone cutters, so let's say you pop off the Monty and you leave a little bit behind, you can get in there and kind of chop it up to pull out the rest of it, scrape it off the rock, it'll be fine. But yeah, a lot of this stuff, I mean, you could just get at the base. I mean, I could see what you have in there, and you could just give that little twist. It'll come off.
It'll come off. Okay.
Yeah, it's not going to be too bad. The Montipore, the green Monty, you can even get in there and kind of tap it with the bone cutters. It'll break off chunks, and you can frag that up and put it in your frag tank. Or even just throw it in on the side here while you're waiting to sell it, since this is the stable of the two systems. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of work, but I think since you're restarting everything, I mean, you might as well do it now.
Okay, so the Zoas keep at the bottom. What about that candy cane? What's a good place for him?
Candy canes are good. Well, if you're looking at, so let's just say that once you get your lighting where it needs to be, you're going to have the top of the rock structure about 300 par, 400 par, then work our way down. The bottom sand bed should be around 200, 150 to 200. That's going to grow pretty much any soft coral in LPS without any issue. You're not going to have any problem. You can even get away with some Monty caps and stuff like that. Okay, so let's just say that your par is where it should be. I would put those Zoas, or not Zoas, but those candy canes, just based on how they grow out in general. It's something that I would put in the rock structure because you can kind of carve the bottom of the skeletal structure so it comes to like a little bit of a point where you can essentially turn it into its own little frag plug, and just find a spot where it's just kind of tucked in there at the bottom, and it will grow out and expand and become a pretty nice little cluster of Duncan or candy canes.
Okay.
And they're pretty, I mean, they're
Is
aggressive.
he dangerous to others? He's got a little
He
guy
is.
that I see reaching out.
Yeah, he is, but he's not. I mean, there's different levels of danger, right? So he's not a torch coral for sure. He's not going to have 8-inch to 10-inch sweeper tentacles wiping out your colonies. He's going to have like little guys kind of chilling out in there. But as long as it's not physically touching, like the skin is not physically touching any kind of egg SPS, you'll be fine.
Okay.
Zoas won't have an issue. If anything, the Zoas will kind of grow on the base of it and just annoy it. But if we're talking kind of like coral warfare, that torch coral in the center is the king of this tank in coral warfare aspects, right? So that thing will kill anything in this tank. Next on the list there is the hammer coral. And if we're going to move on to the next, we're talking about acan zoas, acans, zoas, and candy canes at that point, and then we got our SPS. So, yeah. So again, if you want to put that candy cane somewhere, put it towards the bottom, put it in a little cubby where it can grow into a nice little colony, and as long as it's not touching SPS, you should be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to talk about my parameters a little bit?
Yeah. Let's go into let's go over what you got going on.
let's see, we got so the first thing when I kind of revamped it about 2 months ago, let me get the apex up. I noticed I just had horrible pH, right? Like this is in a little office that I work from
Hmm.
all day. Like I'm in here breathing. It was at like 7.5, um, 7.6. And so I put in the like a CO2 scrubber on, there's like a little protein skimmer in there that's not
Hmm.
really skimming much at all, but did manage to raise the pH. And then I started doing Kalkwasser in there, um, which started to get it to peak up now at like 8.1 it gets up to. So looks like it's going down to about 7.9 at night.
That's fine. Yeah. Now the Kalkwasser, are you ATO dosing that, or is that a reactor?
It's not ATO, it's just on a little doser that does every hour it does 25 mils.
And just pulling from a reservoir of just calc,
Pulling for
saturated calc.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And I do notice that so the reservoir, it's doing about so it's 25 every hour. So what is that like 500 a day?
Hmm.
It's a 2.5 gallon reservoir, which lasts, over a week, almost 2 weeks.
Okay.
But I'm starting to notice like this dip, right? Like look at the bottom yesterday and then look at the bottom today.
Hmm.
Um, does Kalkwasser lose its potency over
If it's
like time?
exposed to oxygen, yeah. So I don't know if this reservoir is open to the air.
No, it's a closed
It's
little,
closed. Also, I
yeah.
mean, there's other factors that involve in this too. So you said you have your skimmer going, you still running the CO2 scrubber, right?
Yep.
Okay, so media depletion. I don't know. Is it a recirculating scrubber
Yeah,
or you?
I got one of you built me a recirculator for that
Okay,
guy.
okay. And so the media, you could tell when it's dead, right?
Yeah, it hasn't changed colors. Like
Okay,
that stuff lasts a long time with the
okay,
recirculator.
okay.
Um,
So there's different things. I mean, you can see it's peaking up there. Also, you got to remember, you've added different lighting. You've put different corals in there, right? That are going to consume different amounts of alkalinity. So our pH is based off of the carbon or the like the alkalinity in our water column, right? And then how much CO2 we can remove from the tank, right? So if you are adding different corals, adding different lights, and you're making these changes, you're going to see some pretty drastic fluctuations. Now, I do see that you were pretty consistent for August 15th, 16th, I think it is, and 17th. I'm trying to see. It's a little blurred on my end, but right there in the middle, you can see you were pretty consistent, and then it
yeah, you
shot
know what?
up.
I went out of town here. I bet that's what it was, right? So I
Okay,
wasn't
so
in
you're not
here
in there
breathing,
breathing.
maybe. Yep.
Okay, okay. Which could be very well. It could be that as well. The skimmer, pulling in more fresh air than usual, and even in general, right? So you're just pulling in more. It makes me wonder, would it be in the media not changing on your CO2 scrubber, and then it changing the pH while you're not there? I wonder if it's connected, like if it's completely closed looped. You know what I mean by that?
Yeah, it should be. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, so I got um, the output of the skimmer, is going into the input of that guy. But you think like you're saying I wouldn't see this just
You
from
shouldn't.
the
Yeah, you
air
shouldn't.
exchange on from the top of the tank. Like,
Because the system is the essentially a recirculating CO2 scrubber. It's enclosed, so you have the same air recirculating through the skimmer and the CO2 scrubber. That's the whole idea of it, right? So you coming and going out of the office shouldn't make any difference on how much CO2 is
isn't
in the
there some
room.
exchange just from the top of the tank or no?
Well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't think it would be that much. I mean, with
Okay.
surface agitation. Also, have you made, I mean, at any point between those 3 days that it was consistent and it went back up, did you make any changes to the light? Did you make any changes with coral? Did you do a water change? Did you dose more? Like, did you add a new container of calc before then? These are all different things.
Yeah, I think the new calc was probably right before I went out of town. So I
Okay.
think it was 19th. This was when I was gone. I mean,
Okay.
I'll have to check the loop, right? Because these
Yeah.
dates really correspond to when I was gone.
Hmm.
Some other things, the temperature would have been a little warmer maybe when I was gone because the Nest
Hmm.
thermostat throws, turns off or raises
The the temp while
raises
you're
the
going.
temperature. Would the
Mm.
temp going up maybe make the pH a little higher? I don't know.
Not really something that I've seen. But I mean, overall, I mean, we're kind of micromanaging like minor points in
Yeah,
pH. But overall, your pH is a lot better than it was several months ago.
yeah,
I mean, you're
yeah.
already at a good calcification range. Why it might have gone up a little bit is probably, it's not, I wouldn't say it's irrelevant, but it definitely has something to do with the change, maybe you not being there. There was something, but as long as your recirculating system is closed loop, you're fine with that. That means you're not burning unnecessary media or pulling air in them you don't need to. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. Overall, you're in a
Okay.
good range. I mean, you're where my 300 is consistently. I mean, that same loop, I get down to like 7.9 at night, maybe 8.1, 8.15 during the day. So, I mean, you're still in a perfectly good range. I mean, if you're
Good.
thinking that this might be a reason why you're not getting some kind of growth, it's definitely not
Okay.
for
Good.
sure.
Yeah. So this looks good.
Yeah, it looks perfectly fine. Yeah.
Other parameters, I don't test many other things too much anymore, but I started doing ALK just when I started with the Kalkwasser.
Okay, I do see you
Um,
have a dip there. So explain yeah, explain that. I can't see
July
dates.
19th.
I can't. So
Yeah, I
July,
don't,
yeah,
yeah.
there we
See
go.
if I
July
can,
19th. Okay.
yeah, I got one there. I don't know what happened here. Oh,
Yeah.
we lost the,
I,
but
oh yeah, it's not tracking. That's cool. It's like I'm gonna do what I want. There you go.
there we go.
Okay, so you did get a pretty
August.
significant dip. And what was the time frame between that original number there, and it going back up? What's the time frame on that? It's hard for me to see
Uh,
on my end.
yeah, it's this was July 19th, so that's 29th. So like 11 days.
And what happened in that 11-day period?
Yeah, that I don't remember.
Okay.
This is probably when I just started dosing Kalkwasser. Oh, the light changed here. Would that
Oh,
make a
okay.
difference? So the
Oh
light,
yeah, yeah. I
I
mean,
went
like,
from a super bright light. I think I was probably still on the HD prime here. And this is when I turned it off to the Kessel lower. Maybe
well, I guess
that's
that.
it.
I mean, that I don't think that would. I don't think that makes sense. I mean, granted, light changing in general can change parameters, but alkalinity usually, if you add more light and you get you get an uptake in growth, that's when your lighting. I mean, your alkalinity would dip down. So, granted, you put a light on, it's a better quality light. It's at a lower par, but maybe you got more growth off of that, which caused it to dip, right? In those 11 days. But other than that, alkalinity, if corals stopped growing, if there was a problem, the alkalinity would go up, opposed to kind of dipping, indicating coral growth. Does that make sense?
Yep. So it's on a little bit of a trajectory up now. Like it was at 6.8, 8.9, 9.5. I just took this reading right before the meeting and it was at
Okay.
9.5. So
So whatever you're doing, like dosing wise, I would either dial that back or
okay.
stop, because you're going up, 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 up to the point where you're getting out of a I wouldn't say a safe range, but you're getting towards a oopsie range. So I would, which means right now that nothing, since it's going up and your dosing is stay the same and everything, it means that you're not really getting growth at the moment. So it's not consuming it like it did before, right? So that's why it's continuing to go up. So you might consider dialing it back for now until the tank stabilizes, just so you don't send it into like 12 or 13 DKH kind of thing.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll keep an eye on it for a couple more days and see what's
Yeah, if it still
going on.
continues
And
to
then
go
I
up,
can just
yeah,
take the Kalkwasser dose down a bit,
down a
maybe.
bit. Yeah, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. I will tell you, just for the sake of like long term success, I'd get away from the jug of Kalkwasser and I'd move to something like a two part. Just because it's just more stable. You don't have to, and plus you don't have to mess with it as often. You just throw a gallon jug on there. It'll probably take you 2 or 3 months to burn through a gallon jug of two part, right? Of calcium alkalinity. Put it on the dosing pumps and go from there. You don't have to mix it. You don't have to worry about concentration. It's easier. And I just throw that out there just because I know that you got a lot going on with the tank already. So let's simplify something, less
Right.
hands on, just
So
food for
the
thought.
two part can be done on a like my doser just it doesn't run constant. The minimum it can do is like an hour or you get 24 settings. Can I do that with the two part?
Well, you'd have to use two heads minimum, right? And you can dose magnesium manually later on to kind of keep it in
Yeah.
range. But
I
yeah,
got
I mean, you could spread out the dose throughout the entire day. You know, you
okay.
don't have to do it all at one time. And when I dose
Oh no, it
two
doesn't
part,
matter. I wanted to make
yeah.
sure it wasn't one that wanted like consistent throughout that like constant drip.
No, no, it's not one
Okay.
of those. So basically, let's just do a hypothetical. Let's say that your tank requires 50 milliliters of calcium alkalinity a day, right? So you could spread that out throughout the entire day, do a few milliliters an hour if you wanted, or you can do it, do a bulk in the morning and a bulk in the evening, or you can do some during the night. Like you could just separate it all you want. Example, my 125, I had a dose every hour on the hour, and I was doing 250 milliliters a day. So of both. So I just kind of separated my calcium alkalinity dosing so they didn't come together in the water column, half an hour apart, but I had them dosing every hour. So that if that's something you want to do, it's fine. But given such a small tank, I think just the consistency of the two part would probably be something I'd recommend just because, there's too many variables
Does
on the
does the two part have the pH effect? I think I went with Kalkwasser just because I was desperate
yeah.
to get some pH.
Well, yeah, you're gonna get I mean, when you're dosing the alkalinity, you're gonna get a pH increase as well. Yeah, you'll be
Okay.
fine. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I know a lot of people push the pH thing, but I mean, you're in a good range as it is. I mean,
But I'm in a good range, I think, just because of the Kalkwasser. Like it was brutal
mhm,
before. It was really low before the
mhm.
Kalkwasser.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna get pH increases with just putting alkalinity in general in.
Okay.
So, it's worth a shot.
Yeah.
It's not something you have to do now. I mean, you have a lot going on with the tank. You literally just overhauled the thing a couple months ago. So, and you just added new light, you just added some new coral. So I think it's something you can do in the future just to kind of stabilize things. If you're finding that you're getting these fluctuations in between changing out the new gallon of it or whatever, the new jug of it, if you're getting these massive fluctuations, it's something that you might want to consider changing out in the future.
Okay.
Hmm.
Got one more question. I got a
Sure.
clam at Aquashella. He's still down in the display tank or the quarantine
Quarantine
tank. Let me
tank.
see. Um, is that an app? Like I didn't move him out because of this thing scared me.
Yeah, that is an
Is that
aptasia
Aptasia?
for sure. Yeah, I mean it. Yeah, I mean zooming in wise, I don't know if you can zoom in a little bit more, but it is definitely. Oh yeah, that's aptasia all day. Yeah, you do. This is why we quarantine.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But
So
is there a risk that some were on the other stuff that was in the quarantine with it, or
mhm.
is he sort of
Especially
isolated?
like yeah, there's always a risk, right? So the zoas, a lot of that stuff will hide in the polyps. It'll be hard to see. On the skeletal structure of the candy cane is a very common place for it. What I would do is, I mean, ideally, what I would do is I would stabilize the quarantine tank, pull all that stuff out, put it back in quarantine before it spreads. Just and then treat accordingly. Like you would have get something in here to kind of take care of the aptasia, nudibranchs or filefish or something that would eat them, clean them up, observe them for a couple months, and then put them in the main display. But yeah, if you toss that in your main display right now, it's such a small tank. It takes almost nothing for this stuff to take over a tank that size. So, um,
But
so
did you
the
say I should pull the ones that I already put in the display and put them
what so
back?
what I would do is I would stabilize your coral quarantine tank
Yeah.
because and I would pull all this stuff out and put it back in quarantine. Now that you see that there's an aptasia on this, I mean that's just kind of the risk we have when we buy at shows, right? So in general, but ideally you should be quarantining everything. That's just I
But
mean
don't you think like
yeah.
whatever was on them maybe already jumped into the main
No,
display tank?
no,
Which
not necessarily. It's not. It hasn't been that long. It's only been a few weeks or a couple weeks, right? So it's not.
Mhm.
It's not been long enough for the aptasia just to kind of freak out. I mean, the likelihood is very slim. I still think that you should consider quarantining everything correctly, essentially, since you got especially since you got the aptasia on this guy already. So, I mean, it's really your call at this point. It's a 25-gallon tank. You got quite a bit of fish in there now. Would you be able to put a file fish in later on or nudibranchs? I don't know. Do you have a wrasse in there? I guess at the top of my
There
head.
is a RAS. There's a
Wrasse.
six line in there.
Okay, so he will destroy all the nudibranchs you put in there to try to eat these aptasia. So potentially you could get away with a file fish in the future to kind of take care of them if they were to happen to jump into the main display and get on the rock structure. But with such a small tank, you don't get away with these types of things as much as you would with a much larger display tank, right? So,
So on the quarantine tank, it's a little 5 gallon tank. It's got like there's no sand, it's just a bare bottom. What what kind of water changes do I need to do on it, or what maintenance do I need to do on
so I would
the
just, are
quarantine?
they in the same room as,
No,
no, it's in there.
it's
So,
down in the basement.
so what I would do is I would pull, when you do a water change, I would just pull whatever water you're pulling from the main display, put it in the quarantine tank.
Okay.
That way you got established water going in consistently. You're still removing nutrients and detritus from the quarantine tank. Do you have a fish in there?
There's not a fish in
Did
there.
anything? So I'd get something living in there, even a file fish, something productive,
Okay.
a wrasse or a file fish, or even both. You said it's a 5 gallon tank. Personally, I think a 5 gallon quarantine tank is extremely difficult to keep stable, or in general, anything 5 gallons in salt water is a headache, right? So if you can upgrade to a 20 gallon quarantine tank, if you can, I mean, you don't have to, but if you can, that's just more water, more stability, right? You could fit a couple fish in there, that like a wrasse and a file fish. They will help, take care of some of these pests as they come in, and just do your water changes from the main display. Put that water in the quarantine tank.
Is the light a big deal on that? I mean, I still have the noisy HD Prime. Should I?
I would move the HD Prime over if it still works. If it's noisy, I mean, you can clean the fan, whatnot. But I would use a better quality light as well, especially if you are going to like a 20 gallon. You're going to need more light anyways. So
Okay.
I think I like to think of like quarantine tanks for coral. It's not like fish. Like fish, you can get away with anything. You can get a strip LED off of Amazon. It has just whites, and you're fine, right? It's a fish. But when it comes to coral quarantine, you're essentially setting up another display tank. You're trying to
Yep.
match your main display tank to the best of your ability, because those corals have to survive the quarantine tank, the stress of pests, the transition from moving. They have to survive that and then transition to a main display, and they have to survive that transition as well. So it's just, it sucks, but sometimes our coral quarantine tanks can get a little excessive, right? Because they
Yep.
have to, depending on, think about it. If you're bringing in a $300 frag, like a Walt Disney or something, like you're just bringing in an expensive frag, are you going to want to throw that in a 5 gallon nano tank that you spent $20 on to set up for a coral quarantine tank and hope that it survives to make it into your main display? So
Right.
that's just kind of, when you move into that direction. So I think personally, upgrade quarantine tank, upgrade the lighting, more water flow, or sorry, more water volume in general, pest removal fish, wrasse, also a file fish, water changes from the main display, and put all the coral back in there and let it sit for the next month or so, observe it, and then stabilize the main display as you're doing that, and then move everything over once you're pest free. I think that's the
Sounds
safe. I think that's the safest bet.
cool. All right. Well, as always, I appreciate your
Yeah,
guidance on this.
yeah.
Um, I will lead you with one interesting thing. I want to show you how bad the algae got before I cleaned it.
Oh, sure. Let's
That
see. Whew.
my clown actually it hosted the clown was or the algae was hosting the clowns.
Both of them. That's crazy. Wow. I mean, I've seen it before, but that's crazy. Hey, man. And I'm surprised they're not in the torch coral, to be honest with you, even at this point, unless they're going in there. But yeah, man, I know that, I mean, to kind of sum it up, I know that you got a lot going on with the tank, and it's kind of, you're redoing everything. Um, but I mean, overall, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's just something I think we got to take a couple steps back and just kind of, now that you're seeing the aptasia on the clam, it's kind of like, oh, well, maybe there's something else, right? So, yeah, I mean, I guess let me know what you figure out, what you want to do. I mean, we can come back to this in a little bit. I know we have some other topics that we want to go over as well, for future videos. We can hash out.
Yeah.
But I don't know. What's your overall like thought process? What do you think you're gonna do?
I think I gotta move that hammer because there's actually like some couple encrusting corals up here that were doing okay, but he's starting to kill them.
Okay.
So I gotta move him and then put the zoas on rocks.
Hmm.
I guess I'll move that. That torch is pretty easy to move actually because he falls down every now and then. Some crab comes and knocks him He's not glued on. So I got to find a place for him, maybe down in the corner, the left-hand corner.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, and I probably, I don't need to get anything new, so I'm less interested maybe in investing in the quarantine
Okay.
at this point and trying to place the coral that I got now in places where it's going to survive a little bit better.
Okay. I mean, worst case scenario, I mean, let's just say a month from now, you end up seeing a bunch of aptasia popping out of the zoas. You could always, like I said, you could try the nudies, but that 6-line wrasse is super aggressive. But you can also add a filefish as well. So that's something you could add if you wanted to. I mean, the tank is kind of stocked at the moment, but you just maybe we'll have to thin the herd. I mean, who knows? Maybe, I mean, I don't really know exactly how well everybody's getting along in there. Maybe a filefish wouldn't be an issue, but I just know that tanks this size, if an aptasia starts off, they can become furry rocks pretty quickly. So, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it is your system. Whatever you want to do, whatever you think is best. I'm just kind of here to help move you in the right direction, or whatever direction you kind of want to go.
Yeah,
But
I appreciate it, man.
yeah. All right, man. Well, hey, let's come back to this in I don't know, a month or two, and kind of see how you're doing, and then just kind of go from there. You want to do that?
You got it, man.
All right, dude. Hey, man. Well, I appreciate you, and I'll see you next time. All right.
You got it.
All right.
Thanks, Travis.
Yep. Later.
Bye.
Bye.